Hello friends, so today we are going to start History Chapter 1, Class 10, Rise of Nationalism in Europe. So as we are covering history and civics in the revision series, here I will explain you the whole chapter with all the finest concepts, but I'll not write detailed information on the board. So let's quickly start with this. Your chapter starts with the explaining of a print which was made by Frederic Seurat, who was a French artist. He engraved the concepts of liberty, democratic republics on stones, and he also prepared a set of 4 prints, among which we are going to study one. He represented an ideal society, that means he had an utopian type of vision that will not happen in real life. So this is one of his prints, and this year we have to learn this. And the question will be asked to describe this print. And this will be a 5-mark question, so it's important to learn. So now let's describe this print. Firstly, we'll write that a long train of men and women of all ages and social classes are marching towards the Statue of Liberty, and these people are from Europe and America. You have to just describe everything that you see in the print. So second point you will write as these people are marching towards the Statue of Liberty, and you'll describe about the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty on one hand has a torch which represents enlightenment, and on the other hand she has the law tablet which represents the Charter of Rights of Man and Citizen. Then thirdly, towards the bottom we can see the shattered symbols of absolute monarchy. And Seurat's utopian vision of an ideal society was grouped by flags and costumes of the people. And now we have to tell the order of people that America has already passed the Statue of Liberty and went forward. Then Switzerland is followed by America, and then French, because French is now at the Statue of Liberty. It is gaining liberalism and it is going to change. Behind French we can see Germany, Austria, Italy, Kingdom of Two Sicilies, Lombardy, Poland, England, Iceland, Hungary and Russia. So this order is important, you have to remember it. Now fourthly we can see Christ, saints and angels at the top, which are representing fraternity or brotherhood. So now after this print we have 2 concepts to learn about modern state and nation state. Under modern state, people have an idea of a centralized power, which is king, who exercises sovereign control over a clearly defined territory. And this was the present condition in most of the places in Europe and America. Then a new concept of nation-state emerged, in which majority of citizens, including few rulers, felt that they have one common identity, that they shared one common history or descent. And this is from where nationalism started, and nationalism itself means the feeling of oneness. And the next topic is about the ideas of French Revolution. So last year you had one full topic on French Revolution and you stopped when you came to Napoleon. So now we are going to study further that what did Napoleon do. So the feeling of nationalism, the feeling of oneness also grew in France, because of which this French Revolution happened. And then France wanted to become a nation state. So there were many changes, many symbols that were bought for making a collective identity. La patrie, that means the fatherland. Les citoyens, that means the citizens. The French tricolored flag was, remade. The Estates General was renamed as the National Assembly. Hymns, oaths and commemorations of martyrs were taken. A centralized administrative system was put on. Uniform systems of weights and measures were introduced. All internal custom duties and dues were abolished. And the use of Parisian French was made most common. So this can be also asked as a 5-mark question, so it's important to learn. So as the French Revolution was successful in France, the French leaders and the Jacobin leaders, they thought that they should go in other countries and help the other people to get nationalism and freedom. And so they made a mission to liberate Europe. French armies went to different countries like Holland, Italy, etc. And the students and many other people supported the French armies and the Jacobin club people. But then soon Napoleon came and he became the new emperor of France. And in 1804 he passed a civil code, or we call it a Napoleonic code also. And under that code he made several good changes, several bad changes, about which we'll learn now. So the first thing, he reintroduced monarchy, which was not liked by the people. Secondly, he gave right to individual property. New administrative reforms were set up. Then he also abolished the serfdom feudal system and he freed the peasants from manorial dues. He declared that all are equal before the law. He removed the guild restrictions in towns. He improved the transport and communication system. He made several uniform laws, weights, measures, and he made the national currency also uniform. So these were the features of Civil Code of 1804 or Napoleonic Code of 1804. It's important to learn again. Apart from that, Napoleon did few wrong things that people did not like increase in the taxation, censorship was imposed. He forced the people to join the French army, though the people did not want, etc. So now, how did this feeling of nationalism come in Europe? For learning that, we have to see the condition of people at that time. The society was divided into two at that time, the aristocracy and the peasants. These landed aristocracy were the more dominant group of the country, but they were in less number. They spoke French to show their attitude, and they owned large country estates and townhouses. Many of them showed common interest and they had a similar way of living their lifestyle. They were connected to each other by marriage bonds. So this aristocracy was powerful, but they were in very small number. And the majority of people were peasants in the society. We had tenants towards the west who owned small plots and serfs towards the east and the center who were a little higher than tenants, but still they were slaves. However, soon industrial revolution happened and the industries and production sectors they started to grow, because of which a new class was emerged, which was known as the middle class or commercial class. So this class came up because of the growth of towns and cities because of industrial revolution. Lawyers, professionals and businessmen were included in this commercial class. Mostly all the people in this new emerged middle class were educated and they wanted abolition of the aristocratic privileges and they wanted a change. That means they were kind of liberal minded who wanted freedom and equal rights and equal opportunities in the country. And so now what is this liberalism? Last year you have learned about it, but still it has come from a French word meaning liber. That means free. Liberalism was of three types: social, political and economical. Under social liberalism, people wanted end of one-man rule, which was aristocracy, and abolition of clerical privileges. They wanted freedom and equality before law, and here freedom of press was in lead. Under political liberalism, they wanted a government by concern, a proper constitution and a representative form of parliament. These people were against the idea of private property and they wanted universal suffrage. And under economic liberalism, they wanted freedom of markets, abolition of restrictions of movements of goods. They wanted a uniform tax, measures and weights. So these three types of liberalism are also important to learn. Questions can be asked, maybe a 3-mark one. So let's move on to the next topic. In 1834, a custom union called Zollverein was set up or formed by Prussia and other German states. So these had 3 aims and they achieved all the 3 aims. The first 2 are the most important, that these removed the tariff barriers or the tariff barriers were abolished. Then secondly, the currency was reduced from 30 to 2. And thirdly, they improved the railway network to unite the Zollverein people. And all these 3 benefited the economic liberal people and they gave them the opportunities of representing themselves in the market and it gave them different type of freedom. We just saw about the liberal people. Now let's see about the conservatives. So these conservatives, they wanted monarchy. They wanted no change in the situation that was going on. They wanted to preserve the Napoleon's administrative reforms, the modern army and the dynamic economy and all this stuff that was there in the history. They wanted that all to be preserved. But later, after French Revolution, people started to realize the importance and conservatives also agreed for a change, but they wanted a change that happened slowly. So in 1815, they took a good step when Britain, Prussia, Russia and Austria together defeated Napoleon. They signed a treaty at Vienna. And this conference was hosted by Austrian Chancellor Duke Metternich. Remember this name as this person keeps on saying many things. A congress was set up and the main objective of this Treaty of Vienna was to undo the most of the changes that the Napoleon had brought. So this is a very important 5-mark question, so learn it here itself. First point, the Bourbon dynasty, which was overthrown at the time of French Revolution, was restored to power. France lost all the territories that he had annexed and it were given back to the respective leaders. Kingdom of Netherlands, which was at that time included in the Belgium, was set up in the north. And many such places were set up so that it prevents the France to expand further. Then Genoa was added to Piedmont in south. Prussia was given the western part and Saxony. Austria was given the northern Italy. Russia was given some parts of Poland and etc. But the German Confederation of 39 states was left untouched. So they brought the return of this same autocracy for which people were fighting. They didn't want this, but then these conservatives, after the Treaty of Vienna, brought all the things back and they did not tolerate any type of criticism and they imposed censorship. And now we learn about the revolutionaries. Revolutionaries also wanted a change, but after 1815 they had a fear of the conservatives and so they had to go underground. They formed various secret societies to unite people and make people realize the importance of nationalism and liberalism. One important revolutionary that you have to learn about is Giuseppe Mazzini. He was an Italian revolutionary and he was a member of Carbonari Society. He formed 2 more secret societies of Young Europe in Berne and Young Italy in Marseille. This is the frequent question that is asked. And his idea was that God has made all equal, so how can one person rule on all of us together? Everyone is an independent person, independent nation, and so the respective leaders should rule us. And here Duke Metternich again said that most dangerous enemy of our social order is this Giuseppe Mazzini. And now we'll start with the age of revolutions from 1830 to 1848. As the video is getting long, we will cover the first 3 parts of your chapter in this video and next 3 parts will be covered in the second one. So let's start with the age of revolution. So now, as the liberal nationalism was spreading and spreading, it gave rise to many revolutions through Europe. And the first upheaval happened in France in July in 1830, because of which it is called the July Revolution. Here the people overthrew the Bourbon dynasty, which was restored in 1815 at the time of conservatives, as we learned. This Bourbon dynasty was overthrown and a constitutional monarchy was set up with Louis Philippe. Here once Duke Metternich again said that when France sneezes, the rest of the Europe catches cold. As I had said, Duke Metternich keeps on giving statements about different people. He had given one about Giuseppe Mazzini and second one about France. So after this July Revolution that happened in France, Greek War of Independence also happened. As Greece was a part of Ottoman Empire for a long time and it was the main educational traditional cultural center of Europe, finally national feeling emerged and people together joined their hands. The artisans, the poets and other people from different countries, they came together for giving independence to Greece. And this was a struggle against the Muslim empire, so many people took part in this very energetically. And here we have an English poet, Lord Byron, who came at the time of First World War to analyze things, but he died because of fever in 1824. And this was also a board question which was asked. Finally, Greece was declared as an independent nation and a Treaty of Constantinople was signed in 1832. Now we have to learn about the romantic imagination or romanticism that brought in the feeling of nationalism. Other than this liberalism, nationalism, conservative people, revolutionaries, there were few people who believed that people can be united only when we support the common people, we respect their sentiments, we treat their culture and traditions properly, and only the feeling of nationalism would emerge in every common citizen of the country. So other romantics and German philosopher Johann Gottfried Herder claimed that the German culture was to be discovered among the common people known as Das Wall. And he believed that the folk songs, folk dances, folk poetries were the true spirit of a nation, which were known as Volgeist. So people started collecting and recording these folk songs and folk culture, and they started showing it to different people so that the feeling of oneness could come. And language also played a very important role for developing the national sentiments in people. In the case of Poland, it was divided into different parts, like one part was given to Russia, one to Prussia, one to Austria, and because of which Poland was not a independent country anymore. So even though Poland didn't exist, but still that national feeling towards the country were there in people, and they kept it alive by the music and language. And here we have a person named as Kural Krupinski who celebrated or who fought against the national struggle through his operas, his music and his folk dances. The folk dances of Poland were Polonaise and Muruka, and because of which Poland was again brought into an independent nation later. As I had said, language also plays an important role. So here we have the example of Poland again. After Russia occupied the Polish people, like when some part of Poland was given to Russia, the Polish language was forced out of the schools and the Russian language was imposed everywhere. In 1831, a rebellion took place. The Polish people had a rebellion against Russia, but which was, crushed because the Polish people were not as strong as the Russians. Later, many church priests and all, they started using Polish language for the church gatherings. All the religious instructions were given in the same language, which was illegal at that time. Because of which large number of priests and the church people were put into jail or they were sent to Siberia, which was a very cold place, for death. But finally, because of their language, because they used their language as their weapon, Russian people could never overtake on these Polish people, and so they slowly they got different freedoms. Now we have the next part where we study about the hunger, hardship and the popular revolt. When these all nationalist feelings were developing at the same time, people were also suffering in various parts of the country. And so this is also an important board question, and the Polish language question is also a board question. So let's start with the answer of this, that in 1830s was a year of great economic hardship for Europe. So first and the foremost reason for that was the increase in population all over the Europe. In most of the countries in Europe, there was a large scale of unemployed youth and population from rural areas, that means from villages, they migrated to cities and they started living in the overcrowded slums. And then which were the small producers or the small scale manufacturers faced a lot of stiff competition with the goods that were coming from England because their industrial revolution had happened much before. In some areas of Europe, aristocracy people still enjoyed their privileges and power, and some peasants still struggled under the burden of their feudal dues, manorial dues, etc. And this year was the year of bad harvest, because of which the price of all the food increased very rapidly. And 1848 was one such year when there were food shortages and there were many youths which were unemployed, because of which the population of Paris came on roads. And Louis Philippe, who was the person with whom in the July Revolution they had signed a contract of constitutional monarchy, remember? Yeah, so that Louis Philippe was forced out of Lee because he was not doing anything good for the nation. And the National Assembly said that they will grant suffrage to all the males above year of 21 and they guaranteed employment to everyone very soon. And now we are moving to a very important part of the chapter, which is in 1848, the revolution of liberals, which is going to lead to the unification of Germany, Italy and Britain. And later we'll study about the female allegories and then about the Balkans. So this whole portion is going to be covered in the next video, as the video is getting too lengthy. So I hope you understood all the concepts, you're clear with every small detail in the chapter. If yes, and if you have understood everything, please hit the like button and do subscribe to my channel for more such videos. I wish you all the best. We'll meet very soon and thank you.